The ultimatum and exodus. The message arrived on every screen across Earth simultaneously, cutting through all broadcasts and communications. The holographic figure of Chancellor Krelnorax of the Galactic Hegemony loomed large, his 6 eyes blinking in sequence, chitinous mandibles clicking with each syllable. Behind him, the insignia of the hegemony, a spiral galaxy clasped in an armored fist, pulsed with ominous light. People of Earth, the Chancellor's voice reverberated, unnaturally deep even through the translation protocols. Your isolation ends today. The Galactic Hegemony has determined your world holds resources vital to our continued expansion. You will surrender your sovereignty, your resources, and 30% of your population for labor redistribution. Compliance is expected within 7 planetary rotations. Resistance will result in immediate pacification. The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving billions in stunned silence. Admiral Ilara Voss stood on the observation deck of Orbital Command Station Artemis, her weathered face illuminated by Earth's blue glow below. At 62, she'd served the United Earth Defense Force for over 40 years, but never had she faced a threat like this. "What's the assessment, Admiral?" asked Director Orion Takedo of Earth Intelligence, his usually composed demeanor now strained. "The Hegemony's fleet consists of at least 80 capital ships and several hundred support vessels," Ilara replied, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "Conservative estimates put their technological advantage at 60 years ahead of our most advanced systems. And our defensive capabilities. Negligible," she said bluntly. "We might bloody their nose, but the outcome would be certain, total defeat within days." Takeda's shoulders slumped slightly. "I was afraid you'd say that." "There's more," Ilara continued, turning to face him. "Long-range scans show a second, larger fleet assembling at the edge of our system. They're not just coming to subjugate Earth, they're planning to strip it bare." "Then we activate the Exodus Protocol," Takeda said quietly. Ilara's eyes widened. That was never meant to be more than a theoretical contingency. "Theoretical times are over, Admiral. It's our only chance." 8 hours later, in the underground chamber beneath the Geneva Global Council headquarters, 24 leaders from Earth's autonomous regions sat in tense silence as Admiral Voss laid out the stark realities of their situation. "The hegemony is not known for mercy," she explained, projecting images of worlds that had fallen under their rule. Barren landscapes, massive strip mines, and labor camps filled the screens. "Their standard approach is resource extraction followed by population control. They're not interested in partnership. We're simply a resource to be harvested." "What about diplomacy?" asked Chancellor Okoro of the African Union. "Surely there's room for negotiation." Director Takeda stepped forward. "We've analyzed communications from 17 worlds that attempted diplomatic solutions with the hegemony. None exist now as sovereign entities. Their populations were either absorbed or decimated." "So we fight," Premier Joe's voice was hard, determined. "We would lose," Ilara stated flatly, "but there is another option." The chamber's lights dimmed as Takeda activated a secure holographic projection. A complex orbital diagram appeared, showing Earth and a vast fleet of ships moving outward, away from the solar system. "Operation Exodus," he said. "A contingency plan developed over 15 years by a secret coalition of scientists, military strategists, and resource specialists." Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the chamber. "You propose to evacuate Earth?" President Rivera of the Americas Federation asked incredulously. "All 9 billion of us." "Not all," Ilara admitted grimly, "but enough to ensure humanity's survival. Our projections indicate we can evacuate approximately 20% of the population." "How do we choose who goes?" Chancellor Okoro demanded. "We don't choose individuals," Takeda explained. "We take cross-sections of communities, complete ecological and sociological units. Entire towns, villages, urban districts selected to maximize genetic, cultural, and skills diversity." "And those left behind?" Premier Joe asked softly. A heavy silence fell over the room. "They'll buy us time," Ilara said finally. "Those who remain will need to give the appearance of compliance while the evacuation proceeds. Once the hegemony realizes what's happening, they'll move to stop us immediately." President Rivera stood abruptly. "This is unconscionable. We're talking about abandoning billions to save millions." We're talking about ensuring humanity's survival, Alara countered. If we stand and fight, we all die. If we submit, we exist only as slaves until they've stripped our world bare. This way, at least some of us, our culture, our history, our potential, survives. And where exactly would these ships go? Asked High Minister Patel of the Asian Coalition. The hegemony controls most of the known galaxy. Takeda gestured, and the hologram shifted to show a region of space far from Earth, near the outer rim of the galaxy. There are unexplored regions the hegemony considers worthless, too far from trade routes, too difficult to patrol. That's where we'll go. We've been secretly mapping these regions for years. With what ships? Chancellor Okoro demanded. We don't have a fleet capable of such an evacuation. Actually, Alara said, we do. Dr. Jadon Mercer's laboratory was buried 2 kilometers beneath the ice of Antarctica. As the Global Council members filed in, escorted by Admiral Voss, he nervously adjusted his spectacles and smoothed down his rumpled lab coat. This is what you've been funding all these years, he said, gesturing to the enormous hangar beyond the observation window. Below, stretching for kilometers, were hundreds of massive ships in various stages of construction. Thousands of workers moved among them like ants, the scale becoming apparent only when compared to the tiny human figures. The ARC project, Alara explained, initiated after our first detection of hegemony communications 15 years ago. Each vessel can support up to 50,000 people indefinitely, Dr. Mercer added, his excitement breaking through his nervousness. Self-contained ecosystems, agricultural sectors, manufacturing facilities. They're designed to function as independent colonies if necessary. How many ships? Asked Premier Joe. 342 are near completion, Mercer replied. Another 100 in early construction phases. Not enough for everyone, President Rivera noted bitterly. No, Alara admitted, but enough for humanity to survive. The truly revolutionary aspect isn't the ships themselves, Dr. Mercer continued, leading them to another observation window. Here, technicians were installing strange, crystalline devices onto one of the completed vessels. It's how we'll escape undetected. Quantum displacement technology, he explained, his eyes gleaming with pride. Theoretically, it creates a sort of blind spot in space-time. The hegemony won't be able to track or even detect our ships once the system is activated. Theoretically, Chancellor Okoro raised an eyebrow. Well, we haven't had the opportunity to test it against actual hegemony sensor technology, Mercer admitted. But our simulations are promising. It's all theoretical, Alara interjected. The entire plan, but it's the only one we have. The leaders looked at each other, the weight of the decision before them palpable in the air. How long would it take to evacuate 20% of the population? High Minister Patel asked finally. With proper coordination, 3 weeks, Takeda replied. The hegemony gave us 7 days. Then we need a distraction, Premier Joe said. Something to buy us time. We'll appear to comply, Alara suggested. Begin gathering resources and preparing population centers for inspection. Meanwhile, the evacuation proceeds in secret. And when they discover our deception? President Rivera asked. By then, the first ships will already be gone, Alara replied, beyond their reach. The decision was made. Within hours, the Exodus Protocol was activated worldwide under the guise of hegemony compliance measures. Public announcements instructed citizens to remain calm and cooperate with relocation efforts for processing and assessment. Behind this thin veil of compliance, humanity's greatest migration began. Underground transport networks, long prepared for this contingency, ferried selected population groups to coastal evacuation points. From there, submarine carriers transported them to the hidden shipyards in Antarctica and similar facilities beneath the Arctic ice cap. Captain Ronan Blackwood stood on the bridge of the Defiance, the flagship of humanity's hastily assembled escape fleet. At 38, he'd spent most of his military career in the shadows, commanding stealth operations against Earth-based threats. Now he was responsible for leading millions to safety across uncharted space. Final loading procedures underway, Captain, reported Commander Neela D. Har, his executive officer. We're at 83% capacity. Timeline? Ronan asked, his eyes fixed on the tactical display showing the hegemony fleet's position near Mars. 12 hours until all designated evacuees are aboard. The quantum displacement systems are online but untested at full scale. Ronan nodded, feeling the weight of command pressing down on him. And the other ships? The first wave is ready for departure. 67 vessels, carrying approximately 3 million people. 3 million out of nearly 2 billion selected for evacuation, Ronan murmured. We need more time. Sir, called Lieutenant Farid Rahman from the sensor station, his voice tight with alarm. Detecting movement from the hegemony fleet. 3 vessels have broken formation and are moving toward Earth. Identification, Ronan demanded. Scout-class ships, sir. Fast movers. They'll reach Earth orbit in approximately 4 hours. Ronan's mind raced. The Exodus protocol called for absolute secrecy until all ships were ready to depart simultaneously. If the scouts discovered the evacuation underway, the entire hegemony fleet would descend upon them before they could activate the quantum displacement technology. We're going to have to accelerate our timeline, he decided. Commander Dihar, signal all ready vessels to prepare for immediate departure. We'll launch in waves rather than all at once. Sir, the protocol specifically warned against. I know what the protocol says, Ronan cut her off. But protocols change when the enemy changes their plans. Signal Admiral Voss that we're initiating Phase 3 ahead of schedule. As Commander Dihar relayed his orders, Ronan stepped closer to the view screen, studying the approaching scout ships. Lieutenant Rahman, what are our options for delaying those scouts? We could deploy the orbital defense platforms, Rahman suggested. They weren't meant to stop the hegemony fleet, but they might slow down 3 scout ships. Too obvious, Ronan replied. The moment we activate those platforms, the main fleet will know something's wrong. He thought for a moment. What about the old satellite network, the decommissioned ones? A slow smile spread across Rahman's face. A collision event, we could make it look like space debris. Make it happen, Ronan ordered. And get me a direct line to Director Taekta. We need to coordinate our ground operations. 3 hours later, 2 of the hegemony scout ships suddenly found themselves navigating through an unexpected debris field as dozens of derelict Earth satellites seemed to spontaneously break apart in their path. While their advanced technology allowed them to avoid catastrophic collisions, the careful navigation significantly slowed their approach. The third scout wasn't so fortunate. A particularly large piece of debris, actually a disguised kinetic weapon, struck its propulsion system. The damage wasn't severe enough to destroy the vessel, but it forced the scout to reduce speed dramatically. On Earth, the first wave of evacuation ships rose silently from their hidden bases, their quantum displacement systems activating as they cleared the atmosphere. To any observer, hegemony or otherwise, they simply ceased to exist. Captain Blackwood watched the tactical display, tracking the invisible signatures of the departing ships. Status of Wave 2. Loading procedures at 91%, sir, Commander Dihar reported. Estimated departure in 40 minutes. And the scouts? Still delayed, but the debris field won't hold them much longer. Estimate they'll reach orbit in approximately 50 minutes. Ronan clenched his jaw. Too close. What about the Defiance? Are we ready? Final systems check complete, Lieutenant Rahman confirmed. Quantum displacement technology online and functioning at optimal levels. But, sir, we're only at 87% capacity. We can't wait any longer, Ronan decided. Signal the remaining ground transports that they'll need to redirect to other vessels. He turned to Commander Dihar. Prepare the Defiance for immediate departure. As the massive ship hummed to life around him, Ronan knew they were abandoning the carefully constructed Exodus protocol. The plan had called for a synchronized departure of all vessels, minimizing the chance of detection. Now they were leaving in waves, with many ships still loading evacuees. Sir, Rahman called out, the quantum displacement field is generating some unusual readings. The power fluctuations are higher than expected. Can we still safely activate it? Yes, sir, but I can't guarantee it will mask us completely from hegemony sensors. Ronan made his decision. We proceed as planned. Signal all completed vessels to initiate departure sequence. As the Defiance rose through Earth's atmosphere, joining dozens of other massive ships ascending into space, Ronan cast one last look at the beautiful blue planet below, a home humanity had known for its entire existence, now to be left behind. Quantum displacement in 3, 2, 1, intoned Raman. The universe seemed to shift around them, light bending in impossible ways as the technology activated. On the tactical display, the hegemony scouts suddenly changed course, accelerating toward their position. They've detected us, Commander Dihar said, her voice tight with tension. Partial detection only, Raman corrected, studying his readings. They know something's here, but they can't get a lock on us. It's enough, Ronan said grimly. They'll alert the main fleet. He turned to his communications officer. Signal Admiral Voss, the hegemony knows. Tell her to initiate the final phase immediately. As the Defiance and its sister ships accelerated away from Earth, the future of humanity hung in the balance. Behind them, billions remained on a planet soon to be overrun by the hegemony. Ahead lay only uncertainty and the faint hope of escape. The greatest exodus in human history had begun. Whether it would succeed remained to be seen. Flight and rebirth. The vast emptiness of deep space surrounded the human Exodus fleet as they pushed farther from Earth. The Defiance led the formation, its massive engines propelling it through the darkness, while the quantum displacement technology created a shimmering distortion around each vessel. Behind them, the solar system grew more distant with each passing hour. On the bridge, Captain Ronan Blackwood studied the long-range sensor data with growing concern. They're mobilizing the entire fleet, he observed grimly. The hegemony isn't just sending a pursuit force, they're bringing everything they have. Commander Neela Dihar stood beside him, her expression equally troubled. They must have realized this isn't just a simple escape attempt. They know we have technology they don't understand. The quantum displacement wasn't perfect, Lieutenant Raman added from his station. It masks us, but not completely. They can detect our warp signatures even if they can't get precise locations. Ronan straightened his shoulders. How many ships made it out? 286 vessels successfully departed, Neela reported. Approximately 14 million people. The remaining evacuation ships were still loading when the hegemony attacked. 14 million, Ronan repeated softly. Out of 9 billion. He pushed aside the weight of those left behind. There would be time for morning later. Status of the fleet. Holding formation, operating at 87% efficiency. The quantum displacement field is stable but drawing more power than anticipated. At current consumption rates, we'll need to deactivate the fields within 72 hours to prevent critical systems failure. By then we need to be somewhere the hegemony won't look, Ronan said. Recommendations. Lieutenant Raman cleared his throat. Sir, the navigational database contains several potential refuge locations, but none within 3 days travel at our current speed. Then we need to go faster, Ronan decided, or find somewhere closer. Deep within the Defiance, Navigator Talia Reyes hunched over ancient star charts in her private quarters. At 34, she was one of Earth's most gifted cosmologists and stellar cartographers, recruited specifically for the Exodus mission. While the ship's automated navigation systems plotted standard courses, Talia searched for something else, something hidden. Her quarters were plastered with star maps, holographic projections, and arcane calculations. To an outsider, it might have appeared chaotic, but to Talia, each piece was part of a complex puzzle. Computer, overlay the quantum resonance patterns from the displacement field onto the stellar density map of Sector 7, she instructed. The holographic display shifted, combining the data streams. Talia's eyes widened as patterns emerged, connections she hadn't seen before. There, she whispered, tracing a faint line that seemed to connect several otherwise unremarkable star systems. Computer, what is this? Unknown phenomenon detected, the computer responded. Subspace corridor possibility, 87%. Talia's heart raced. Subspace corridors were theoretical pathways through space-time, natural phenomena that could allow for faster-than-light travel without conventional warp technology. If this was indeed such a corridor, it could provide the fleet with a path the hegemony couldn't follow. She reached for her communicator. Navigator raised to Captain Blackwood. "Sir, I've found something you need to see." Meanwhile, aboard the hegemony command ship Inevitable Dominion, Chancellor Krelnorax received the reports from his pursuit fleet with growing rage. His chitinous exoskeleton bristled as his subordinates cowered before him. "Impossible," he hissed. "No primitive species possesses technology capable of evading our sensors." "The evidence is undeniable, Exalted One," Fleet Commander Vexter replied, keeping his eyes downcast. "The humans have developed some form of cloaking technology we haven't encountered before. Our sensors can detect their presence but cannot establish locks for weapons targeting." "And how many escaped before we arrived?" "Unknown, Exalted One. We estimate between 200 and 300 vessels, given their size, potentially millions of humans." Krelnorax's rage manifested as a deep humming from his thorax, a sound that made even veteran officers tremble. "This was not a hastily assembled evacuation," he said finally. "This was planned, years in preparation, which means they detected our approach long before we arrived." "The implications are concerning," Vexter admitted. "More than concerning," Krelnorax snapped. "If the humans have technology to detect us at such distances and the capability to partially mask themselves from our sensors, what other advancements have they hidden? And more importantly, where did they acquire these capabilities?" "There is another matter, Exalted One," Vexter said hesitantly. "We've detected communications from multiple worlds within hegemony space, encrypted transmissions using methods similar to those employed by the human fleet." The Chancellor's 6 eyes narrowed. "You suggest coordination between our subjugated worlds and the humans." "The evidence is preliminary, but—" "Find those ships," Krelnorax interrupted, his voice deadly calm. "Destroy them, every last one, and begin immediate security protocols on all controlled worlds. Any sign of dissent is to be met with immediate pacification." Back aboard the Defiance, Captain Blackwood stared at Navigator Ray's discovery with cautious hope. "A subspace corridor," he mused. "Theoretical, unproven, and potentially unstable." "But if it exists," Talia argued passionately, "it could cut weeks off our journey and take us beyond the hegemony's sensor range. They wouldn't be able to follow our trail." "Or it could tear our ships apart," Commander Dihar countered. "Subspace corridors are theoretical for a reason. No one has successfully navigated one." "No one has had the need we have," Talia insisted. "Captain, our quantum displacement fields are failing faster than projected. Within 50 hours, we'll be fully visible to hegemony sensors. This corridor is our best chance." Ronan studied the data carefully. "How confident are you in these calculations, Navigator?" 87% confident in the corridor's existence," she replied. "Approximately 60% confident in our ability to successfully traverse it." 60%, Ronan repeated. "Not odds I'd usually bet on." "Sir," Commander Dihar interjected, "long-range sensors are detecting hegemony vessels altering course. They're spreading out, establishing a search pattern that will eventually intercept our trajectory." Ronan made his decision. "Prepare the fleet to alter course. We'll investigate this corridor. If it appears stable enough, we'll proceed." "And if it's not?" Dihar asked. "Then we fight," Ronan said simply. "Either way, we're not going back." The quantum corridor entrance was invisible to normal sensors, detectable only through the specialized equipment Navigator Rays had calibrated. To the naked eye, it appeared as nothing more than empty space near an unremarkable red dwarf star. "All ships in position," Commander Dihar reported as the fleet arranged itself in a tight formation. "Navigator Rays, you're certain this is the entry point?" Ronan asked, studying the apparently empty space on the view screen. "Positive, Captain," Talia confirmed, her eyes darting between her instruments. "The quantum resonance patterns are strongest here. We should be able to enter by generating a specific subspace frequency. And once we're in, the corridor should carry us approximately 12 light-years in a matter of hours rather than weeks," she explained. "If my calculations are correct, it will deposit us near the Cerulean Nebula, well beyond hegemony-controlled space." Ronan nodded, then addressed the fleet-wide communication channel. "This is Captain Blackwood to all vessels. We are about to attempt passage through an uncharted subspace corridor. Form up in the designated pattern and maintain your positions relative to the Defiance. Disengage quantum displacement technology on my mark to conserve power. We'll need full energy reserves for what comes next." He paused, aware that their next actions might determine the fate of humanity's survivors. "Navigator Rays, begin the entry sequence." Talia's fingers flew across her console, initiating a complex series of energy pulses directed at the seemingly empty space before them. For several tense moments, nothing happened. Then, gradually, the fabric of space-time began to distort. A swirling vortex of energy formed, blue-green tendrils of light expanding outward to create what appeared to be a tunnel through the very fabric of reality. "Entry aperture stable," Talia reported, her voice tight with concentration. "Corridor integrity at acceptable levels." "Proceed," Ronan ordered. The Defiance moved forward, the first to enter the shimmering pathway. As its bow crossed the threshold, the massive ship shuddered violently. "Hull stress increasing," Lieutenant Raman called out. "Within tolerable limits, but higher than anticipated." "Compensate with structural integrity fields," Ronan commanded. "Signal the fleet to adjust their shields to match our frequency." One by one, the human vessels entered the corridor, disappearing into the swirling energy tunnel. Inside, space itself seemed to compress and stretch simultaneously. Stars outside the corridor blurred into streaks of light as the ships were propelled forward at impossible speeds. "Corridor is maintaining stability," Talia reported, though beads of sweat had formed on her forehead. "Estimated transit time, 4 hours, 26 minutes. Keep close watch for any fluctuations," Ronan instructed. "At the first sign of corridor instability, we exit immediately wherever we are." 3 hours into their journey through the subspace corridor, disaster struck. Alarms blared across the Defiance's bridge as sensors detected an energy surge rippling through the tunnel ahead of them. "Corridor destabilizing," Talia shouted above the noise. "Something's disrupting the quantum field." "Source," Ronan demanded. "Internal," Commander Dihar replied grimly. "It's coming from within our fleet." Security Chief Terk Nassar's voice came through the comm system. "Captain, we've detected unauthorized access to the quantum displacement systems on Deck 12. Security teams are responding, but—" His report was cut short by a distant explosion that reverberated through the ship. "Sabotage," Ronan realized. The hegemony had infiltrators aboard. "The corridor is collapsing," Talia warned. "We need to exit now or we'll be trapped inside when it disintegrates." "Signal all ships," Ronan ordered. "Emergency exit procedures now." The fleet began forcing their way out of the destabilizing corridor, shields straining against the increasing turbulence. Several smaller vessels were damaged as energy discharges lashed out like lightning within the tunnel. When the Defiance finally emerged, it was into a region of space Talia didn't recognize. Stars formed unfamiliar patterns, and directly ahead loomed the massive blue-green expanse of the Cerulean Nebula, its gases swirling in cosmic majesty. "Report," Ronan demanded as the ship system stabilized. "We've traveled approximately 10 light-years, Talia said, checking her instruments. "Not the full distance, but far enough. The nebula will help mask our presence." "Fleet status." "All major vessels accounted for," Commander Dihar reported. 17 smaller ships sustained significant damage. Three are not responding to hails. Ronan closed his eyes briefly. "More lives lost. Security status." Chief Nassar reports the saboteurs have been neutralized, Dihar continued. 4 hegemony operatives disguised as human refugees. They managed to plant devices on the quantum displacement system before being discovered. How did they get aboard? Ronan demanded. Unknown, sir. The investigation is ongoing. Ronan turned to the tactical display. Any sign of pursuit? Negative, Lieutenant Raman replied. The corridor collapsed behind us. Even if the hegemony detected our exit point, it would take them weeks to reach this position using conventional warp technology. Then we have time to regroup, Ronan decided. Deploy repair teams to the damaged vessels. Navigator rays find us somewhere to hide within that nebula. The Cerulean Nebula proved to be both sanctuary and discovery for the human fleet. Its dense gases and unique radiation patterns effectively masked their presence from long-range sensors, giving them the respite they desperately needed. As repair teams worked to restore the damaged vessels, Navigator Talia Rays made an unexpected discovery. Deep within the nebula, sensors detected traces of artificial structures, remnants of an ancient civilization long vanished. It appears to be some sort of monitoring station, she explained to Captain Blackwood as they studied the holographic representation. Thousands, perhaps tens of thousands of years old, but still partially functional. Alien technology, Ronan mused. Any indication of who built it? None that we recognize, Talia admitted. But the quantum signatures are fascinating. They resonate at frequencies similar to our displacement technology, but far more refined. Could these builders be related to the technology we used to escape Earth? Commander Dihar asked. Impossible to say without further investigation, Talia replied. But it would explain how we developed such advanced technology so quickly. Their discussion was interrupted as Lieutenant Raman called from across the bridge. Captain, long-range sensors are detecting warp signatures approaching the nebula perimeter. Hegemony configuration. How, Ronan demanded, how did they find us so quickly? Unknown, sir, but their trajectory suggests they know exactly where to look. Battle stations, Ronan ordered. Prepare the fleet for defensive positions. We may not be able to run this time. The battle at the Cerulean Nebula would later be remembered as humanity's first stand against the galactic hegemony. Outnumbered and outgunned, the human fleet used the nebula's dense gases and radiation to their advantage, employing guerrilla tactics against the superior hegemony forces. Captain Blackwood directed the defense from the Defiance, coordinating with the other captains to create the illusion of a larger, more powerful fleet. Ships would emerge from the nebula's gases, fire their weapons, then disappear back into the concealing clouds before the hegemony could target them effectively. Still, the battle was going poorly. 3 more human vessels had been destroyed, and the hegemony's advanced technology was gradually adapting to their tactics. We can't keep this up much longer, Commander Dihar reported grimly. The nebula's radiation is affecting our shields. Another hour, maybe less, before we start taking critical damage. Ronan knew she was right. They were fighting a losing battle, one that would end with humanity's extinction if they couldn't find a way out. It was Navigator Talia Rays who provided that way. Captain, she called urgently from her station. The alien monitoring station, I've managed to partially access its database. There's a planet approximately 2 light-years from our position. The station was monitoring it. Another alien outpost? Ronan asked. No, Talia replied, her voice trembling with excitement. It's a habitable world. Oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere, gravity 93% of Earth standard, abundant water and vegetation, and it's completely unmarked on any hegemony star charts we captured. A hidden world, Ronan murmured, one the hegemony doesn't know exists. Not just hidden, Talia continued. Protected. The monitoring station is part of a network of devices that generate a massive cloaking field around the entire star system. That's why it's never been discovered. Hope, fragile but real, began to form in Ronan's mind. Can we get there? Yes, Talia confirmed. The station contains navigational data that should allow us to slip through the cloaking field. But we'd need to leave now while we still have enough ships to protect the civilians. Ronan made his decision. Alert all vessels, we're making a run for it. The desperate flight to the hidden world was a tactical gamble. Captain Blackwood ordered the civilian ships to proceed at maximum speed toward the coordinates Talia provided, while the military vessels formed a rearguard to hold off the hegemony pursuit. The Defiance itself remained at the very back of the formation, its weapons blazing as it covered the retreat. Ronan knew they couldn't defeat the hegemony fleet, but they only needed to delay them long enough for the civilian ships to reach safety. Shields down to 28%, Lieutenant Raman reported as another barrage of hegemony weapons fire struck the Defiance. Hull breaches on decks 7 through 11. Divert power from non-essential systems, Ronan ordered. How many civilian ships have cleared the nebula? 83%, Commander Dihar replied. Estimated time until the last ship clears, 7 minutes. We may not have 7 minutes, Raman warned. 3 hegemony dreadnoughts are moving to flank our position. Ronan studied the tactical display. Their situation was dire, but they were so close to succeeding. Prepare to deploy our remaining quantum displacement mines. We'll create a disruption field large enough to cover our retreat. Sir, Commander Dihar objected, those mines are our last line of defense, if we use them now. If we don't use them now, there won't be a later, Ronan cut her off. Deploy the mines on my mark. The massive quantum displacement devices, originally designed to hide small planetoids from hegemony sensors, were launched toward the approaching dreadnoughts. When detonated, they created a cascading wave of spatial distortions that temporarily blinded the hegemony sensors and disrupted their weapons targeting systems. All civilian ships clear, Dihar reported as the Defiance shuddered under another impact. Military vessels withdrawing in sequence. Take us out, Ronan ordered. Maximum speed toward the coordinates. The Defiance turned and accelerated away from the battle, its damaged engines straining as it pursued the rest of the fleet. Behind them, the hegemony vessels regrouped, continuing their pursuit, but now delayed by the lingering effects of the quantum mines. They're still following, Raman noted grimly. They won't give up, Ronan agreed. Not until they've destroyed every last one of us. He turned to Navigator Reyes. Talia, how close are we to this hidden world? Approaching the cloaking field perimeter now, she replied. I'm transmitting the entry protocols to all remaining ships. On the view screen, space itself seemed to shimmer and distort as they approached an invisible barrier. Following Talia's carefully plotted course, the Defiance slipped through a momentary opening in the field, followed by the rest of the human fleet. The effect was immediate and astonishing. Behind them, the opening sealed, and sensors showed the pursuing hegemony fleet suddenly veering off, as if they had completely lost track of their quarry. They can't see us, Talia said in wonder. The cloaking field is perfect. To their sensors, this entire star system simply doesn't exist. Ahead of them, a golden star burned bright, and orbiting it, a blue-green world reminiscent of Earth but untouched by industrial civilization. Pristine oceans, vast forests, and sweeping plains were visible even from orbit. A new home, Commander Dihar whispered. Haven, Ronan said, giving the world its name. Prepare landing parties. Let's see what kind of welcome our new home has for us. As the first human shuttles descended through Haven's atmosphere, no one aboard expected the welcome they received. Rising up from the surface were massive, crystalline structures that had been invisible to orbital scans. As the shuttles approached, these structures projected holographic images, alien faces, but with expressions unmistakably conveying welcome. The Voidwalkers, as they called themselves, were not the builders of Haven's protection system. They were refugees, like humanity, the last survivors of a civilization the hegemony had destroyed centuries earlier. They had found Haven and made it their sanctuary, protected by the ancient technology of a long-vanished precursor race. Now they offered to share their world with humanity, recognizing in these new arrivals kindred spirits who had suffered at the hands of the same oppressor. In the months that followed, human settlements took root on Haven. The ships that had carried them from Earth were repurposed, some as orbital defense platforms, others dismantled to provide materials for the growing colonies. The alliance with the Voidwalkers provided access to technologies humanity had never imagined, while human innovation and determination impressed their new allies. 1 year after their arrival, Captain Ronan Blackwood, now Admiral Blackwood, stood with Navigator Talia Reyes on a cliff overlooking the largest human settlement, New Geneva. Below them, humans and Voidwalkers worked side by side, building a society unlike anything either species had known before. "Do you think they're still looking for us?" Talia asked, gazing up at the sky where the cloaking fields silently maintained their protection. "Without doubt," Ronan replied. "The hegemony doesn't forgive and it doesn't forget, but neither do we. The Voidwalkers say their resistance cells are still active on dozens of hegemony worlds," Talia noted. "And with the communication technology they've shared, we can coordinate with them." "The Terran Alliance," Ronan said, testing the name they had chosen for their new interspecies coalition. "Not just surviving, but preparing to fight back." "Do you think we can win?" Talia asked. "Against an empire that controls most of the galaxy?" Ronan looked out over the thriving settlement, where the future of humanity was taking shape, not as conquered slaves, but as free people determined to forge their own destiny. "The hegemony never saw us coming when we escaped Earth," he said with quiet confidence, "and they won't see us coming when we return." High above, the first ships of the new Terran fleet took shape in orbit, incorporating technologies both human and Voidwalker. They were not yet ready to challenge the hegemony directly, but that day would come. And when it did, the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had not just escaped, it had found its true beginning.